I think has been so appealing to people about it is a different take on the superhero genre, and that's exactly what people respond to.
I think we're always excited to read what the writers are coming up with. There's some shows where you read the script, you're like, okay, I should stay on top of this, but it's kind of maybe like a case of the week type show. We're invested in the same way that the fans are invested and feeling all the same things, outrage or sadness that the audience is feeling in terms of the editing is just trying to pace, try to keep your attention, but at the same time, we're trying to build the story.
Curious about creating high-quality YouTube videos? Enroll in video editing and production classes at Manhattan Edit Workshop to sharpen your skills and turn a hobby into a career. Start your journey to becoming a pro today. Hey everybody, this is Josh Apter from Manhattan Edit Workshop, welcoming you to Sight, Sound, and Story 59, Behind the Lens and the Edit of the Boys. This episode is a bit of a double threat because we have cinematographer Dylan MacLeod and CSC, and editor David Kaldor talking about both the cinematography and the editing of the final season of The Boys. I'm sure it's already happened by now, so you're watching this, you've already seen the last episode, so don't worry about any spoilers, but we're going to go into talking about all the big ideas and big sequences in this show and some of the quieter moments too. So we have moderator Chad Anderson. He is a Manhattan Edit Workshop teacher and a professor at Brookdale Community College and an old friend of ours. He does a great job. You're in excellent hands here. So aside from thanking, let's see, American Cinema Editors, Filmmaker U, Edit Stock, Jason Banky, and Janet Dalton from Manhattan Edit Workshop, who make all of this very easy for me. I hope you enjoy the show, and I'm going to stop. It's going to start. Have a great one. Enjoy.
Hello, and welcome to another installment of Sight, Sound, and Story, where we have the unique pleasure of talking to artists and creators behind film editing, sound, and cinematography. My name is Chad Anderson, and today I am delighted to be talking to some of the creative team of cinematographer and editors of the fantastically somewhat demented and visceral show on Amazon, The Boys, based on this gruesomely entertaining satirical comedy. I'd like to introduce the cinematographer, Dylan MacLeod, who's worked previously on From, Lock and Key, and Cardinal. And from the editing department, I'd like to talk to David Kaldor from Suits, Gen V, Lost in Space. Gentlemen, thank you so much. I'm really excited to talk about this show, The Boys. I will be honest, at first, I think the first season, I was not so sure I was in love with this show, and then it just becomes an addiction. I get inundated with the gore and the violence and the blood and the things, and it just falls into appealing to me in a way that I'm really excited about. I'm excited for both of you to be here to talk to me today about the show. Um, Let me ask both of you. So with a nature show like this, and a lot of these shows on Amazon, a lot of these shows in general, there seems to be a sense that cinematographers will and editors will be on an episode and then off an episode, or handle two, three, and four, and then disappear for a couple episodes and then come back for a couple episodes. How do you keep up with what goes on in the length of the show? Per se, that if you're coming in episode four, you're coming in episode two, you're coming in episode six, and then disappearing. Do you have to like watch the entire show to stay with the tone of it throughout the thing?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. There's an sort of overarching kind of tone discussion that goes on for what the whole season wants to be, and especially after season one, there was some very well established ideas of what framing should be, what kind of coverage we do, and all of that. So there's to go back to your question about who shoots what. I'm For the DPs, generally what happens is you're alternating. So one DP will do the even number episodes, one will do the odd number episodes, and
Yeah.
you alternate that way. Well, we're prepping for one episode, the other DP is shooting, and then vice versa. So, all the while we are watching the dailies of what the other DP's doing, and keeping tabs on that. And we talk to each other about like, are we going to keep with the handheld this season, or are we going to do more studio mode? And there's a lot of discussions about that stuff. And for sure, with the boys, that evolved from season one to season five. We're pretty much all handheld, most of the time now. But that's generally how it plays out from my perspective. Yeah.
Season one, we were three editors, and everybody kind of had their own episodes. We would all help each other out. I remember Nona was getting bogged down, and I think all my episodes were locked, so I would kind of help out with her stuff. And then in the more recent seasons, I've been coming on as the on episode one and then kind of just helping out and then taking episode eight for myself. But there's always passing back and forth of ideas and hey, do you think this is working? What do you think of this performance? Are we trying to steer this person? Everything on the show is always trying to make it more as grounded as possible, but sometimes it's just helpful to get a fresh set of eyes, which um, I always think is valuable to talk to everybody else on the show and my assistants. And, um, it's always good to get a fresh perspective.
What's interesting to me now is that almost like the like a cinematic universe comparable to Marvel. There's a lot of spin-offs. There's Gen V. There's this new program that I see coming out called Vault Rising, which I assume is another variation of that. There was a Billy Butcher micro short. That's another story there. Do you have to, in terms of telling the story in such a kind of comprehensive universe, do you have to keep tabs on what's going on in there? Because in season five, you're introducing now Gen V characters into the boys, and you're introducing, other storylines that kind of intersect in between there. Does it get more complicated for you?
I mean, I think the goal has always been that you don't need to have watched Gen V to enjoy The Boys. If you do, and it's like it's a nice little, it's a bonus to kind of keep you, because we do take so long to work on these because they're so visual effects heavy. Um, but I think we always try to balance clarity with entertainment on the show. I think a lot of times we're trying to um, make the story clear and keep people following, and but at the same time keep it moving along and not slowing it down and saying, "Oh, well, you have to have watched this other show to be able to follow along." So that's the goal.
Well, I think David said it earlier too, the word grounded. I mean, that's something I think is consistent through all the different versions of the show as well. There's a certain kind of grounded quality that we always want to keep. So, in terms of a consistency or a universe, that's maybe one thing
Yeah.
that keeps coming back. But
Yeah, I find myself when I'm watching episodes that I keep, the internet handy so I can Google who is this character and where were they from? Because someone will name drop some random character and I'm like, I don't remember who this is. I have to like take notes to remember. Oh, okay, this is the guy who was in the prison, who was in there and did that, and with all the new shows coming, I feel like it's just going to expand more and more. That I'm going to have to keep like an entire encyclopedia with me of all the characters and the moments there. Um, and as I said earlier in this, when I first started watching the show, the novelty of what I would consider the gross factor. I saw that, I was like, oh, they blew up somebody's head. And then you're like, okay, they just did that as a one-off. And then I watched episode, and we're going back first season. I watched episode two and three, and then it was like, oh, this is something this is a style. This is an approach to handling how they're going to tell the story as kind of visceral and as bloody as possible. From a shooting perspective, Dylan, how does that work in terms of practical versus CG effects of kind of leaning into that gross factor of doing those kind of things? Are you like, is there just blood spraying all over the walls all the time on that show?
pretty much. I mean, that's the preferred methodology. I mean, again, going back to that word grounded, that's, there's a huge amount of visual effects on the show. But that said, when we're in prep, we're always looking to, how do we do things as practically as possible? Because we know that that's always going to be the best looking thing. It's not always the easiest way to do it. And, we kind of bump into problems, and that's where visual effects kind of steps in to help out. And for the blood factor, for example, in season five, I mean, we had this one mansion that we shot in that we just absolutely could not get blood on. So, we relied heavily on that for visual effects. But otherwise, it's like Huey's getting sprayed with blood. That's what's going to happen.
In my experience, seeing the visual effects coming through and talking to those guys, when there is practical elements, even if they step in and go, well, let's try to enhance this or let's try to remove
Yeah.
this a little bit, it's always going to be better starting with something real that they can work off of, or even if it's just an element, even if it's just they shoot a blood bag exploding,
For
all
sure.
that just makes it that much better in the final product.
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like we went through this generation of as much CGI as possible. But now there's this kind of new ethos of can we make more and more things practicals? I've been watching a lot of horror movies recently, and they are also leaning into a lot of this, what can we do on set to really, capture that, physical, tactile grossness that just is, has a different visual idea from a CGI perspective. I don't know if you can see that it's a CGI thing, but I think starting with the grounded, as you said, David, in, a blood bag, that really splatters that we can enhance with some, color or some, glow or something like that. But starting there, it's become kind of this new approach for a lot of filmmakers to create those kind of things.
Yeah, and you're sort of shocked in season one of, seeing that's how things are going to be handled. It's like that comes from the comic book. If you've seen the comic book, I mean, there's so much in there on the each of the panels, So you had to kind of translate that accurately.
Do you go into scenes like that, from either a shooting perspective or an editing perspective? Do you go into scenes like that and say, oh, there's a giant phallus that's going to be wrapped around some guy's throat, and know that this is going to just like we're pushing the envelope of how much we can gross out our audience? Do you take like some reward in that of excitement of knowing that we're going to be blowing up so many people's heads or ripping people into shreds or whatever it may be? Is it fun?
It's absolutely fun. Yeah. I mean, I don't write the stuff, but when I read it, I'm just like, oh my God, this is going to be first of all, a huge challenge. But also then it's going to be like the conversations we have are just ridiculous, but totally fun. Yeah.
And I also think there's like the saying like a gilded lily or a hat on a hat, and I think we always try to go the opposite direction. So like if we know something's gross, okay, well how can we make this work in the scene, and why are we doing this? We try to fight the lean. We don't want to lean into it, like playing comedy music under a funny scene is never a good idea.
Sure.
And I also think going back to season one, way more in season one than the later seasons. We always talked about Homelander. Everybody's seen Homelander fly a million times. It's like seeing Shaq dunk. Yeah, it's like it's kind of cool, but it's not a big thing. We're not hanging a lantern on any of this stuff, any of the superheroes, which I think helps with your point about the CGI, and we were kind of saving it for other aspects.
I like that in the previously on previous episodes, the episode, the previous season recap or the previous episode recap, to catch you up to speed. There's usually a montage of just heads exploding. I think that really, I think what it does is it set like this is who we are, this is
Yeah.
what you're in for, minus the storyline. You're going to see a lot more of this, and it's going to be a lot more destruction of human body parts. It's kind of amazing. Um, in terms of this, going from this, and I think there's a loyal fan base coming from the comics and coming from just myself, who I've never read the comics, but just coming from season one to season five, you build this loyal fan base. And I was starting to think in season five about the finale of the show or the ending of the show, or just really the course of every character. Um, in terms of that, do you think that characters had a goal in mind or had a purpose in mind? They had a deliberate purpose of stopping the soups there. But I was looking at, in terms of, narrative structure, in terms of just creating characters who have some further destination. I felt like season five had to be, everyone's trying to accomplish something, and this is the season to wrap it up, and this is the season to do it. Was that part of the thought going into it? Was like, oh, you know, um, Homelander wants to get to here. Homelander wants to get to an idea, and Huey wants to get to an idea, and Butcher has a reason, and even the Deep, and A Train have this, you know, from season one, this overarching goal that they wanted to achieve throughout the show that they're trying to get to.
Yeah, I mean,
Part of
I
that.
think we're always excited to read what the writers are coming up with. I mean, I think there's some shows where you read the scripts because you're like, okay, I should stay on top of this, but it's kind of maybe like a case of the week type show. But I think we're invested in the same way that the fans are invested. And I mean, I'm feeling all the same things, outrage or sadness that the audience is feeling, and I get to watch it for the first time. And I think in terms of what you're saying about the heads popping stuff off in the recaps, I think we that's like a sort of an overarching theme in terms of the editing is just trying to pace, 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 but then at the same time, like we have the flashy stuff and we try to keep your attention, but at the same time we're trying to build the story too. And one of my favorite moments in terms of the season five, uh, well, we've done it three times really. In 106, Butcher's on the bench talking to Huey, and contrary to how we normally work on the show, we just are hanging in these really long just
Hmm.
cut. And he's describing what happened with Becca and Becca's backstory. He's on the bench with Huey. Then in 408, we have Butcher and he's in the hospital bed talking to Huey, and we're doing the slow pushing on him and not cutting away. We're not getting Cuddy. I love Cuddy. I love Cuddy more than probably any of the other editors who've worked on the show, but I do find it's really fun to do that. And then finally in the Oval Office, once Homelander Butcher's finally achieved his life's mission, and
Yeah.
just staying on Carl. I mean, Carl does such a great job, and Phil, our director, shot it this way. It's not like I I didn't manufacture it. I'm just working with what we've got, but uh he's just so empty. And just staying on him and lingering on him, I thought that was really heartbreaking and a lovely moment.
These are all, flawed people who are getting to somewhere, who care about a thing and are wrestling with their own demons and their own psychological, torment throughout their lives. That I'm, almost shedding a tear for some of these characters who are so larger than life and cartoonish at some points. And the next thing you know,
For
I'm
sure. Like, I mean, like I worked on the show since season one. I've done four out of the five seasons. And for me, it was Frenchie and Kamiko that I really sort of
oh
connected with emotionally. And I know you didn't want to give any spoilers, but that's for season five. I mean, episode seven for me was such an emotional, like personally emotional
yeah.
episode for me to shoot because it was such a big moment for them, and wanted to get it right. On top of the fact that Tomer and Karen are such great people and such a great pleasure to work with, there's absolutely that personal connection above and beyond all of the other aspects of the show for sure.
I want to take a look, if I can, at this scene. This is from the beginning of season five. So this is season five, episode one. This is kind of the reintroduction of I guess of Homelander back into this. This is early on in the episode where Homelander takes the stage once again. So let's take a look at this scene here, and we can talk about this from, I guess, a shooting standpoint and from an editing standpoint.
Thank you. Thank you, and welcome to the Vought International Annual Meeting of Shareholders.
Okay, give me my firecrackers. Places, ladies, places. Let's go, let's go. Up to it. Let's go, come on. Stay in line, keep it tight. Copy, I've got them heading to the wings now.
Yeah, what's interesting, like going back to your question about VFX. I mean, there was a lot of discussion about practically how we were going to shoot that sequence because quite often you just put up a big green screen and you'd figure it all out later. But for a number of reasons, it would be a very expensive and difficult thing to try to do that, and it would, I think, not look as good. There'd be a lot of contamination of that green screen in the environment, and it would I think it would have sort of tipped it off. So that was, I think, one of the challenges because I guess, for David, you kind of get locked into, what's on the screen as what you're stuck with behind the person at the moment they're speaking, with, I guess, a little bit of visual effects if you have to replace that and do some rotoscoping. But yeah, so that was sort of one of the big factors in that is getting all of the material that was going to go on that screen. And then, yeah, Chad, as you pointed out, that is our introduction to Homelander in the first episode of season 5. So, we had to make it a moment. So, him kind of descending down and picking the right angles with the backlight and the flaring and all of that stuff were sort of big elements to try to make a big hero's introduction to him hitting the stage.
Yeah, I remember working on this sequence, and the big thing I think that we messed around with, and it started in the director's cut, was and continued through the producers' cuts, was intercutting Annie and Noir fighting with Homelander's speech, and how do you maintain the energy, not take away from him, and the comedy and stuff. I think the General Mayhem Eric always got a laugh out of that, seeing that guy up there. Um, so no, it's always an important scene. Always the beginning is always really difficult, or it gets not necessarily difficult, but it gets under the most scrutiny, I think, because it's so important to kick it off right and get everybody reinvested.
I think interesting that's done throughout the show. There's a sense of what you talked about, David, of this the kind of parallel editing, where you have, but it's all often it seems like one story is very situated, static. We're just hanging out there. Meanwhile, the boys and Starlight is racing to get to somewhere. And there's this sense of, kind of tension of, they're hurrying, they're racing. Meanwhile, there's something very, placid going on the other line of the parallel, where it's just kind of just staying there. We're just waiting, and Homelander's giving some address, and meanwhile they're somebody else is racing to put an explosion. It creates this sense of, for me, a sense of dichotomy between you know this nervousness of this apprehension versus this very kind of just, hey, this is status quo and this is how we're going into the show. And I just thought about it now that I see that a lot in a lot of these episodes in terms of style thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, we're just trying to make the most entertaining thing that we can. And so I think we're really lucky that we've got, Eric Kripke is probably the busiest person on the show, but yet he always immediately responds to anything you send him. He's sort of superhuman, and he'll always see an idea. Like, he will always be open to watching something, and I think a lot of showrunners would say they need to see it as scripted, and I believe as scripted, this was just like Homelander just gives his whole speech and may even been a little bit longer than what the final product was. And then we go to the fight. And so being open to just trying stuff, I think, is like a reason why the show's been as successful as it has, and just experimenting and being unafraid to fail too. Like, I think if if something isn't if something doesn't work, it doesn't take off, it doesn't get traction, you get like a, hey, noble effort, but let's just try the straight version. It's never like, oh man, this guy's driving me crazy, I don't have time for this. I've never heard
Yeah.
Eric ever say that he doesn't have time to look at something.
As you said, David, kind of, for both of you, from a showrunner perspective, you deal with, certain showrunners who are very much, tied to the script and tied to don't change anything. And I've already written this in my head and don't touch anything and don't change things. From what it sounds like, and Dylan, you were kind of nodding in agreement, that Eric Kripke, the showrunner, gives you a lot of slack to experiment and try stuff and explore. Were there moments in this show, in the different seasons, where you said, hey, let's try this, let's do something that just, worked out and changed either a minor thing or a major thing, and just said, hey, let's go from this direction and approach it this way, that wasn't necessarily tied to the script, that you see as a kind of a win in terms of what you were able to contribute to the show?
I'm going to say no off the top. The show has such a sort of specific kind of style that I feel like we really had to kind of stay married to that. I mean, there was one episode in on season 5 that kind of jumped away from that, but it was sort of written that way, and it was fun to kind of jump outside of the established style of the show and experiment a little bit. And that was an opportunity to kind of, bring some ideas to the table to kind of figure out what those different components would be. That would be episode 5, that are essentially 5 different sort of visual vignettes in one episode. But, otherwise it really is, I find it is kind of, we know what the style is, and there's not a huge veering away from it from a visual perspective, I'd say.
In terms of another show that I worked on a long time ago, Terriers, they would do the scripted version, and I mean, we definitely want to have the scripted version. It's not like, oh, let's just blow that off and just go experiment and la di da di da. It's more like, hey, I've got that. What about this? I think it was 401 when Homelander was doing like interview after interview, and we were trying to say, oh, he's saying the same thing over and over again, and I had pitched the idea of just having like a grid of, we had to, I think art department or maybe visual effects had to come up with some new, because we only had 5 TV stations, so we had to come up with like 12 or 13 or something. And then that seemed to be like just a stylistic, it seems like a really small thing, but I think a lot of a lot of effort went into it. I feel like a lot of what we do, we agonize over really small details that maybe an audience would not necessarily pick out. But cumulatively, I think that the show feels much richer because everybody's so invested in trying to put their best foot forward, at all moments.
When I'm watching this show, I've often thought about this show as the kind of the demythification of the superhero. It's not, it's not Superman, it's not Captain America, it's not always do the right thing in the end, and it kind of creates this reality of that, if you were given superpowers, would you use it to further your own needs and further your own interest and to break the law and to take advantage of things, and take away some of those ideas? Do you think this show does that, demythifies the idea of humans who have gained superpowers and have lost a sense of purest of heart?
For sure. I think that's the whole crux of the show. I think that's what I think has been so appealing to people about it is, it is a different take on the superhero genre, and that's exactly what people respond to. I think what you're describing.
Huey is also kind of the moral canary to Butcher. It's not just shining a light on the bad guys. It's a little more complicated than that, which I appreciate. And then Maeve is sort of showing the person who wanted to do good and then was burnt out. And Starlight that's something she's really struggling with in season 5 is, why should I keep going? Why shouldn't I just give up? Which is, I think that's interesting, and I certainly find a lot of myself being reflected back in the show. It's interesting things that I grapple with myself, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, and it isn't just the superheroes. Yeah, it's the boys. I mean, who are supposed to be the underdogs, who are also supposed to be viewed as heroes, and they're all flawed as well. And
Sure.
you really enjoy kind of watching them go through their problems as well, because yeah, it is a mirror in a way.
I want
You can do
to
whatever
take a
you
look
wanna
at this
do.
other clip here from episode season 5, episode 1. This is towards the end here, and this is the breakout. I guess the breakout of the internment camp for Starlighters, in terms of there. So let's take a look at this. So again, this is kind of the climax of this first episode, which is really setting the tone, I think, for the rest of the season. Tell me a little bit about this episode and what you thought about this scene and this moment here, where A Train finally confronts Homelander and kind of sees through him.
I thought it was a little cathartic for me. It was really nice to see A Train slash Jesse finally, just let it go. And I think I felt a lot of relief too in that, whenever you stand up to a bully and you have that moment where you just don't care anymore, it's like it's really kind of liberating and freeing. So it's as tragic as it is. It was also a pretty great moment, I think.
Yeah, and it was wonderful to see him come full circle, and they cast a woman who kind of looked like Robin, who he could miss, and that's why I think it was we were all a little nervous, like was that all going to be as clear as it possibly could be? And it was really uh I don't know. I love seeing like the fans' reactions to people like immediately just knowing exactly, okay, that was Robin, and that was such a good button up on his redemption arc, and Jesse's so good. I think Ant is a really strong actor, and I've never been around him in real life because we edit in Los Angeles and you guys shoot in Toronto, but. He seems like a pretty intimidating guy. I mean, especially
Yeah.
acting side by side with him. And so it was like good for Jesse, to just like he did not care at all. He was just sticking it to him and I could feel like just watching dailies, like Ant was feeding off of that. Like he was getting like more mad and it was really they were just bouncing off of each other really, really nicely. And then actually it reminds me a little bit of a later in 508 when Ryan and Homelander are having their tete-a-tete, and it's anytime you see and basically anybody besides Butcher going head to head with Homelander, I think it's a little bit scary. It's like there's a tension in there. Just oh, who's gonna win this? Because Homelander's invincible.
David, you mentioned working with Anthony, and I think watching Anthony interviews and watching how he is as a regular actor in interviews and even in other movies and shows, man, it is a night and day switch when he becomes Homelander, like the most despised person in the world. And then I see him, on Jimmy Kimmel or something, and he's a totally, totally different person. And I'm just like, this is how Clark Kent fooled everyone from being Superman. Um, but I think in terms of the show, I think he really does, maintain this presence of omnipotence. Um, and I think it's, partially the way it's edited, but partially the way it's shot. Just those close-ups of those, terrifying canines that he has.
Well, and it's just to say, like on set, he really isn't a method actor, and it's pretty incredible to watch. Where it is like he's who he is, and then the camera rolls, and he just turns into this monster. It's pretty incredible to watch how sort of casual and nonchalant he could be as soon as we call cut, and yeah, it's pretty spectacular.
My question was going to be is what is it like watching that transformation of going from, who he really
Oh,
is.
I mean, it's delightful. It's like I get to see it first and I get to enjoy it. And somebody was telling me about another editor was talking about Meryl Streep and saying she always makes different choices and they're always amazing. And that's how I feel about Ant. Like he gives you it's not the same thing every time. And he's always trying new things, but it's never off. It's like I could use any of these. And he's just yeah, he brings so much and he's always prepared. I mean, he's never flubbing lines. He's never he doesn't waste anybody's time from what I can tell. I mean, and certainly there's some actors who that's their process is to just kind of go like, oh, let me just say the same line over again 10 times or something. And that's fine. It's perfectly fine. Or there's some people who just kind of stumble through or they're having a bad day. But I mean, and even on his worst day, when you find out that, oh, he's got a temperature of 105 and he had the flu, he's still destroying it. He's like using it I think he was like the radiation sequence this season. He actually was like seriously sick, but he was like, "Oh great, I'll just use like the snot running down my face to help sell that I'm sick in this scene."
Amazing.
No, he's just like just a gift, and I don't get the impression that he relies on his gifts either. I think he's working his butt off, you know,
Yeah.
to be the best that he possibly can be and to be the best for everybody else there too.
Yeah, and there's a bit of an exploration that happens. I find a little bit more so with Ant than some of the others, but it's an enjoyable process that, again, over 5 seasons we've come to know, and everybody appreciates what comes out of it. So we specifically take the time to make sure we allow a little more time for the blocking because we know it's going to be a complicated process, and but the results are well worth it.
Talk about delivery and performance. I do want to take a look at this scene, and this is Homelander giving this address. His newfound, I don't even know what he is, ruler of the world or post-presidential um, takeover of him in the White House talking about how he is God now. If we can cue up this scene and take a look at it.
I simply ask that you open your hearts and put your faith in me. Those who accept my truth will be welcomed into a land of milk and honey, for I am your... I am... But no matter what I do, some of you people will never accept me into your hearts. Never love me. Never believe in me. And to such heretics I offer oblivion. And those who seek to destroy me, you will die the most horrible of deaths, as befits your wickedness. My reign will last forever, and when this world is cold and dead, I shall remain eternal. God of the ashes.
Evening, cunts. Daddy's home.
William. I was starting to think you weren't going to hold up your end of our deal.
Scorched earth.
Shame about the French one. How's your little science experiment going without him?
Let's find out.
I have so many things. I have so many things I want to talk about. And I'm keeping notes here. I think David, I think going from a scene of him saying father and loving children and then cutting to Ryan in whatever stash house he is. I often think of, the simple idea of some of these cutaways as the simple choice and just the right choice. It's just the right choice. It's like, as a viewer, it's what I want to see. You know, I don't want to see Butcher. I don't want to see Huey. I don't want to see anybody else. I want to see Ryan. And just that moment right there, I'm like, oh, I want to see Ryan. That's exactly who I want to see at that moment there. And I think that's such an easy, cut to make to be like, oh, but to know the audience and know what the audience is thinking of, you can see that Homelander is struggling.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're always trying to balance clarity with keeping the story moving, and a little bit earlier than that, there's this part where Homelander's just kind of sitting there stewing, and we did this intercut. I don't remember whose idea it was. I think it was one of the other editors, actually, Scott Stolzar, who said, "Let's try to flash to." It's like Homelander beating up Ryan and Homelander
Hmm.
struggling with Soldier Boy. It's like this is his daddy issues come to head, and it's kind of like a nice thing. And then we did that blow up on the father just to make it super clear on the
Yeah.
teleprompter, and then yeah, going to Ryan And on the one you were trying to balance like, okay, keeping Ryan alive, but also like, yeah, that is kind of about Homelander, you know, feeling let down. I mean, the way that he, complains to A-Train's coffin about how, why did you, why we were bros, man, like what'd you do? You know,
Yeah.
nothing's ever his fault. Uh, it's great, and I mean, and Anne's performance is so spot on. I mean, I think that's a really, really difficult speech to give and to keep it entertaining, compelling, and to come up with like something to say that's like to do. He just holds the screen in a way that
Yeah.
uh makes my job easy, I'm not searching for stuff like, oh, maybe I can fill this in, maybe some music will help. Like, you're not throwing the kitchen sink at it trying to like pull up tricks and stuff to trim out air or to try to, you know we're using the close up, but which I love. I mean, I love close ups. I think that they're I can't get enough of them, for better or worse. But it's not like we're zooming in to try to squeeze something out of it that's not there.
No.
I think we're trying not to force anything. And then I love when Butcher comes in and Homelander's glad to see him. That's
Yeah.
one of my favorite
Yeah.
moments.
The shot and a lot of these shots, I when Butcher comes in, I think about um a number of scenes, the tilt up or the pedestal up of from starting with the boots stepping over. um it's just like, it reminded me of the Matrix. A lot of those scenes of Neo arriving to get into there, but just it's a sense of catharsis for me. It just felt like this is what we've been waiting for, in terms of this whole show, of this
Yeah, I
final
mean, I will
fight.
say Johnny Cliff shot this episode, but in terms of those kinds of hero reveals, I mean, that's something I think that happens consistently that we talk about throughout episodes, where whether it's a person's introduction for the first time in the season, or
Yeah.
we're always looking for those kind of moments like that, and how do we introduce them in some kind of iconic way, whether it's that kind of tilt up or a push in or a wrap around the face or something like that. So.
Dylan, you mentioned in a lot of the episodes, or you mentioned that most of this show is what you said before, that I was surprised about, that most of this is done handheld. Um, how does that work?
Well, we have some very patient camera operators. I mean, the rigs are pretty heavy. We shoot with anamorphic lenses and a fairly hefty camera. So, yeah, I mean, obviously it does waver depending on the director and depending on the scenes. And, we do kind of veer off of that from time to time when it's appropriate. But I think, in season one, the idea was that, when we're with the boys, we're handheld, and when we're with the superheroes, we're in studio mode. There were certain rules like that early on. But I think, as we got into season two, I remember Eric Kripke just saying, look, it's all a mess. So let's just, be handheld. And again, getting into the grounded sort of idea. And although it certainly doesn't look like a documentary, the idea is that there should be this sort of documentary ethos about how we capture the footage, and it should feel fairly spontaneous. And going back to the idea of, they hate doing oneers on the show because, we like the editorial options, but quite often we'll shoot scenes like a oneer in order to kind of give the camera and the performance the energy it would only have that way unless you broke it down into separate shots. So, yeah, so handheld is definitely a tool we use a lot, and I think it helps with the performances. Multiple cameras as well, so in the overlap, I don't know if that's something you notice a lot, David, when we
Oh
have
yeah.
three cameras going. I mean, for performances and actors overlapping and all of that, I think there can be compromises from the cinematography standpoint when you shoot that way, but I think it's sort of made up for in the end product and the ultimate storytelling and performances. So.
Yeah, and I
So,
can't say enough
that
about how important it is to intros, like what Dylan was saying. That is a huge, huge part of the show. It's like, and speaking with the camera, it's like we're not afraid to get a little Spielbergy, to use that as another narrative tool, which I think is I enjoy that. I like that. I like, it makes it feel more directed. I'm not a big fan of like the witness cam or the, let's just put on sticks and like let them walk in proscenium style. That's not I mean, in the right context, that can be awesome, but we are trying to tell the story in as many ways as possible, I think.
Yeah, and there's a certain energy that happens with the handheld, and I think also a freedom. I find with the the blocking of the actors, it makes for a lot more flexibility. And when we talk through blocking about if we're going to be handheld, then there's a lot more that they can do, and a lot more that the camera can then capture in sort of one go, rather than having to chop it up into little bits, which again I think helps with the performance continuity and the overall scene.
It's funny because for a show, there's moments where, this is not real at all, and this is, completely embellished. But there are some moments of genuine fear that I'm, when we're in the tunnels and we're underneath, and I'm like, no, there's some people are definitely going to die, and I really feel the sense of fear. Is it fun, or is it kind of, almost? I imagine it's such a challenge to transition from, you know, goofy ridiculousness to serious mood to downright scary to ridiculously gory to, it's like turn the hot and cold temperature on in your shower, to go back and forth in terms of that. Do you wrestle with that, or do you just kind of just dive in head first?
I
I
mean, I
mean,
like it because it's the idea of like parallel would be a color palette. If you're always warm all the time, you're going to get used to it always looking warm, and it's not going to feel warm anymore. So, by having that such a varied, sort of emotional kind of roller coaster like that as well, I think it keeps the audience on edge a little bit and not knowing what to expect really.
we just watch it, and if it feels bad, then we know we're not done yet. We just keep working it and working it. It's like, um, you just have to, you can't give up until it's feels good. And so when you're watching it and they come out and Deep's like sobbing, you know like that's hilarious. It's if it doesn't make you laugh, then it's not gonna make anybody else laugh. So like, okay, it didn't make you laugh, like, all right, let's talk about getting rid of it or shifting it or moving it somewhere else. Let's, we're definitely, it's not like we put it together once and then that's it, for better or worse. It's everybody is trying to make the best show that we possibly can.
I don't know why the Deep is my favorite character. I don't know what it is about his moments and his scenes. They just are just fantastically rewarding to me. Like and I think that again, like A Train, like even Firecracker, even but I think the Deeps, struggle with identity over the past 5 seasons has just been just fascinating to me. That in the last season, he loses every bit of who he is as a person, and it's just kind of a downward spiral for the Deep, that I almost started feeling bad for him at the end.
When he's doing his apology video, Jennifer Fang, the director, sometimes, I guess I'm old enough to remember the days of film when you didn't have this kind of latitude to just kind of keep like roll like 5 takes in one take.
Yeah.
She would just kind of they just keep rolling, and she would come in and she'd say, "Oh, hey, Chase, let's try to be more emotional in this one, or let's try to be a little more earnest on this line." And then she'd get out, and so we actually just cut her into it, like interrupt, saying, "Okay, like cut," and then her running in, and I thought that was like one of my favorite parts of that. Just the goofiness, like of it was just great to see Chase. He's staying in character kind of, but like I just think that's one of my favorite moments, that a little behind the scenes, I guess, a little
Yeah.
inside baseball for everybody, but I thought that was very funny.
But I mean, it does work because it's almost the idea that, that at the end of the day, VOD is a TV show. VOD is a marketing campaign, and
Exactly.
you have this sense of kind of the play within the play, if to quote Shakespeare. You have this sense of you're doing a TV show about a TV show, and so a director coming in and coaching. Chase on how to be more emotional would be the same director coming in to coach the Deep on how to be more emotional. It works in the same kind of universe. Um, Dylan, you mentioned anamorphic lenses. I'm always from the nerdy perspective. What in terms of show creation, whose idea was it, and where did it come from, and what do you think the anamorphic provides for the cinematography?
Well, I think so. I came into season one on episode seven. I took over for a DP that was leaving, and so I was kind of getting up to speed on what the show was all about. And I was actually happily surprised to hear that they were shooting anamorphic. And I was like, okay, so do we have to protect for other formats? And they were like, no. And my understanding, it came from Seth Rogen. He really wanted to shoot true anamorphic with the squeeze, with the true anamorphic lenses, not a crop. And there's a certain quality about the lenses that we settled on, which are the Cooke SF anamorphics, that
Okay.
I think just look incredible. And I think it's that whole idea of kind of creating the cinematic aspect of what the show wants to be. Although it is grounded and we do a lot of handheld and there's a bit of a documentary vibe to it, it still wants to feel epic and cinematic. And I think the anamorphic does that. And just I mean, like I said, yeah, the lenses, I think they look fantastic. It just makes it a lot of fun to shoot pretty much anything. So
In terms of that, in terms of the big picture, we kind of said this early in the interview. Um, uh, Overarching tone from the showrunner. Was there something that you were going for in terms of tone that was given to you? This is the big picture. I'm always fascinated by this idea that there's some kind of ethos that a showrunner or director or producer will run into. Even Seth Rogen will run into and say, "Hey, we want to make this as much like this as possible, or we want to keep this idea in the back of our heads at all times."
I mean, it pretty much happens on every episode. I mean, I remember going into my first tone meeting with Eric Kripke and Stefan Fleet, our VFX supervisor. He was like, "Oh, this is probably going to be about 5 hours," and I was like, "What are you talking
Wow.
about? It's like a 50-minute script or whatever." He was like, "Oh, a lot," anyway. So, but I found that was sort of the beauty of it is Eric Kripke, cares so much about every element of the script that the tone meetings become these very intense sessions of going through character, going through like down to like extreme details. I remember the episode I did in season one. It was going to be the first time Carl Urban and Simon Pegg were going to meet each other on screen, and Eric Kripke knew that this was going to be something for the fans of Star Trek who to see
Yeah.
these two guys come together. So he was like, really make sure you get a close up of their hands shaking before we see their faces. And so that kind of detail and sort of oversight of what the show wants to be just is incredible to have. It's like when you have a really strong leadership like that, it just makes everybody's job really much easier, and it gives you a really clear path of how you need to execute things.
And he's incredibly decisive and really fast. And I think that, people can get hung up in the details in a bad way, where they just go, oh, well, I don't know, I don't know. Let me try it this way. And then you end up, you're there till 2 in the morning or something because people can't decide or they can't. He is extremely efficient. He's managing his day, but he's still, he still has time to say, "Hey guys, how's it going?" and a little chit chat. And then it's like, okay, now we're off to the races and we're gonna like get through this in this amount of time and we're gonna be very specific and he knows exactly what he wants. And even if he doesn't know exactly what he wants, he gives you a specific direction to go into and to try, okay, let's try this. It might not be there yet, but this is where we're gonna go. And it makes such a huge difference in the quality of the product. And then also in just in making you can put your energy into a place where you feel like you're all pushing in the right direction. It's huge. It's huge coming from the top like that.
This being the presumed ended of the series, you had that really charming and lovable and very sweet post kind of credit scene of all the on set people and all the showrunners and different people in there giving the finger, of course, because that's what you do now. And that kind of thing. There is a sense, with any show, and a show is as kind of large and as um, fan adored as this, there is a sense of a family there, and there is a sense of a growth there. If you were to narrow down things you'll miss that, unless you're doing a future spin-off endeavor of the Boys universe, of doing a show like this, either from a technical standpoint or just from an artistic standpoint, what will you mostly miss now that this has come to a conclusion?
I think just the gem of a cast that we had. I mean, because Like it's and it comes down from the number one on the call sheet down the list. I think that sets the tone for how everything's going to run on the floor. And like you say, that sort of homage at the end of the last episode really kind of sums up that we really did become a family over, like there are a lot
Yeah.
of people that worked on that show since the beginning. And after 8 years, you really do form a bond, and you actually do enjoy being at work together, and it's a really sort of rare experience. So I think I am going to really miss just being able to work with a cast like that, or at least hope that I get another cast like that in the future. So yeah.
To make something that's good, to make something where everybody's pulling in the same direction, we're all part of a team. There's not a lot of ego stuff going on. There's no and people like it. People, we've got the
Yeah.
audience there. It's like sometimes you make something that you is great and the audience just doesn't show up for it, and you're just like, that's a different kind of heartbreak. But it was just so I think most of us were aware of the fact that it was something special, and we were able to savor it in the moment. So I think it's been something that I've been definitely conscious of is enjoy it now because it's not going to last forever, and it doesn't come along just like that. I remember working on Frida, and one of the post PAs was saying, "Oh, I just thought I was going to work on Oscar nominated movies for the rest of my career." That's not how it works.
No, no. Do you get a lot of people who come like family or friends who are addicted to the show and are excited that you get to work on it? Do you have those, people
Yeah,
close to you
I did a
that are
watch
jealous?
party here at my place with a bunch of friends, and it's that whole thing where you're friends, but then at the end of it, they're like, "Oh my God, I can't believe that's you!" It's so
Yeah.
it is this really cool kind of moment. It's really nice to be able to share with friends, and yeah, it's very cool.
I've
Yeah,
been
it's
surprised by some people who, like my mom, I was like, I don't think you're gonna like this. It's too much blood. And she's like perfectly okay with it. She loves the show.
Dylan MacLeod, David Kaldor, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today about this show. I wasn't sure at first, and I did fall in love with this show, and I was really moved by the last season. So thank you so much for talking about the technical things. Good luck in future endeavors, and I am hoping. I hear of things of other spin-offs and other shows coming out. I hope that you are still involved, and I hope they are still as I hope they will be as exciting as the rest of the boys. It's been great. It's been a wild ride, and I'm glad I lasted through it. So thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us.
Thank you, Chad. Appreciate it.
For having us.
All right, everyone. I hope you enjoyed Sight Sound and Story 59, Behind the Lens and Edit of The Boys. And I want to thank again American Cinema Editors, Edit Stock, Filmmaker U, and Janet Dalton and Jason Banky for all of their help getting these things together. We have many, many more events coming up. They're all great, exciting deep dives into craft of the shows and films that you love. So stay tuned, like us on all the socials, and let us know if there's anything you want to see. We'd be happy to take care of it for you. All right, I'm Josh Apter, signing off. Thanks for watching.